The morning rain was soft but steady, drumming gently against the windows of the towering glass office building in Midtown Manhattan. Inside, a buzz of activity was underway as employees bustled around the 27th floor of Sutton Hartley Marketing Group. It was Monday, new hire orientation day. Nobody paid much attention to the man who stepped into the lobby at 8:47 a.m., shaking off an umbrella and carrying a worn leather briefcase. He wore a plain navy blue coat, clean but unremarkable, over a dark suit. He nodded politely to the receptionist and stood quietly, surveying the office. He was black, tall, in his mid-40s, with salt and pepper hair cropped neatly and a calmness in his dark eyes that seemed to observe everything but say nothing. "Can I help you?" asked a woman behind the reception desk, her smile tight and professional. "I'm here for orientation," the man replied. She glanced at him, then down at her clipboard. "Are you a new hire in the janitorial team?" The man raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. "No. I'm starting today in an executive role." "Oh, right." She gave a dismissive laugh. "You can take a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." As he sat down, two young white men in expensive suits passed by. One nudged the other and muttered something with a snicker. The man looked up at them, not in anger but as if mentally taking notes. "Hey man, maintenance is down on the B2 level," one of them joked. "I think the boiler's acting up." The man smiled slightly but said nothing. Upstairs, in a sleek boardroom with a view of the city, executives were gathering to meet the new chief executive officer. Sutton Hartley had just merged with a major European firm, and the board had quietly appointed a new CEO, a decision kept under wraps to surprise even the senior leadership. "He better be sharp," muttered Greg Langford, the head of operations, swirling coffee in his mug. "This place is hanging by a thread." "You think it's that same guy from Boston? The Harvard grad?" asked Marsha Crane from HR. "No idea. But let's hope he's not soft. We need someone who understands real leadership, not just theory and diversity points." Back in the lobby, the man's phone buzzed. Message from board chairman: "You're clear to walk in. Conference room A." "They're all waiting." He stood, straightened his tie, and made his way to the elevator. On the ride up, he adjusted the pin on his lapel, a quiet gold crest with his initials. When he stepped into the boardroom, the room fell silent. Greg, Marsha, and the others stared. The same man they had brushed off, joked about, and dismissed was now standing at the head of the table. He placed his briefcase on the polished wood surface, opened it slowly, and pulled out a slim folder. Without looking up, he began to speak. "My name is Daniel Kwame Eboh. I'm your new CEO." Silence thickened the room like fog. "I've read your reports. I've studied your strategies. And I've observed your culture, firsthand. Before we begin, I'd like to share something personal." He looked around the room, his voice even but firm. "My father was a janitor. My mother cleaned homes. I studied by candlelight in Lagos before earning scholarships that brought me to MIT. I worked on Madison Avenue, then in Paris, and I built one of the most profitable independent firms in Europe before you ever heard my name." A hush fell over the room. No one spoke. "But today, I came in quietly. Because I wanted to see how this company, my company, treats the people it doesn't recognize." He looked directly at Greg. "And I saw enough." There was a long, uncomfortable pause. Greg shifted in his seat, his face flushed. Marsha's eyes darted to the others in the room, desperate for someone to break the silence. Daniel continued. "This isn't just about hiring new leadership. It's about healing a culture that has been allowed to decay under the weight of unspoken biases. I saw it the moment I stepped in. The receptionist assumed my position. Your staff joked about maintenance. Nobody looked me in the eye until I stood at this table." He opened the folder, revealing printed emails, performance data, and HR complaints. "These are internal documents I requested weeks ago. There are complaints here, real stories, from staff who have faced daily microaggressions, passed up for promotions, disrespected in meetings, or simply ignored. Not because of performance, but because of skin." He slid the folder across the table. Greg reluctantly picked it up, scanning the pages. His smirk was gone. "We are not here today to shame anyone," Daniel said. "But let me be clear, this culture will change. Because we cannot call ourselves a global firm while we operate with local ignorance. He let the words hang in the air. I've faced worse than your assumptions. I've walked into boardrooms where no one looked like me, and still came out owning the table. I don't need to prove myself. But I will ask each of you, can you prove to me that you deserve to stay in this room? The power shift was complete. Greg leaned back, his bravado dissolved. Marcia sat up straighter, her eyes glassy. Others nodded slowly, realizing the depth of what they just witnessed. Daniel adjusted his tie, sat down, and pulled out a pen. Let's begin. The rest of the meeting unfolded like a slow, cautious confession. Every executive was asked to speak. Daniel didn't call out names, he let the silence do that. As the morning wore on, what started as a formal introduction became an emotional reckoning. A few began to apologize. Others deflected. One or two even excused themselves from the room. After the meeting, Daniel stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Marcia approached him, holding a coffee, her hands slightly trembling. I owe you an apology, she said. I didn't expect any of this. And I'm ashamed of what I did and didn't do. Daniel turned, meeting her eyes. Change doesn't come from shame, Marcia. It comes from what you do next. She nodded, quietly moved. As the staff filed out, word began to ripple through the building. Who was the new CEO? Was it true he was the same man who'd sat in the lobby that morning? The receptionist, pale and shaken, stared at her desk for a long time. One of the young men who joked earlier with his friend walked back to his cubicle in silence, visibly rattled. Daniel returned to his office, his nameplate not yet installed, and looked around the room. It was spacious, high-tech, sleek, but sterile. He took out a framed photo from his briefcase and placed it on his desk. His mother and father, smiling proudly in front of a small concrete home in Lagos. Then, a second frame, his two daughters, grinning at a science fair. He sat down slowly, resting his hands on the desk. The work had only just begun. That evening, long after most employees had gone home, Daniel sat in his office, the city lights stretching endlessly beyond the glass. The office was quieter now, but his thoughts weren't. A soft knock broke the silence. It was Malik, one of the junior analysts, a young black man who had kept his head down since Daniel's arrival. Daniel had noticed him immediately, recognized the tired weight in his shoulders. He knew that look. Sir, Malik said, hesitating at the door, I just wanted to say, thank you. For today. Daniel waved him in. Sit. Malik stepped in slowly. When I started here a year ago, I was excited. First corporate job. Full suit. Dreams. But by month 2, I realized I was invisible here. People forgot my name in meetings. One guy called me Marcus for 8 months straight. HR shrugged. I started to shrink. He looked down. But today, when you stood there and said what you said, not loud, not angry, just true, I felt seen for the first time since I got here. Daniel nodded, listening, letting the silence stretch with meaning. You're not here to save anyone, Malik continued. I know that. But just being here, as you are, changed something. Daniel leaned forward. You've got ideas, Malik? Malik blinked. Yes. Lots. Daniel smiled. Then prepare to pitch one next week. The floor's open now. Malik's face lit up, not like someone handed a gift, but like someone rediscovered their own voice. Over the following months, Sutton and Hartley transformed. The receptionist was moved to a different department after formal review. The two young men who mocked Daniel on his first day? One resigned quietly. The other asked for a meeting with Daniel and returned with a different posture. Greg Langford didn't last. His resistance to change became a liability. Marcia stayed, but she learned, listened, and led HR reforms with real accountability. Daniel didn't deliver flashy speeches or hold DI parades. He focused on culture, the kind built one decision at a time, listening before acting, hiring based on both skill and integrity, calling out bias even when subtle, and mentoring those overlooked. By the end of his first year, the company had landed its biggest contract in over a decade, with a global client that cited inclusive leadership as one of the deciding factors. But Daniel didn't frame the article from the business magazine that credited him. He framed something else, a sticky note left on his desk one morning. It read, "Thank you for showing us how to lead without shouting. We were deaf until you walked in." Signed, Anonymous. He smiled and tucked it into the photo frame beside his daughters. Years later, at an industry summit, Daniel took the stage briefly to accept a quiet leadership award. He was still reserved, still exact, still unbothered by praise. After the event, a young white executive approached him. "I was at Sutton and Hartley during your first year," he said. "I was one of the people who made a lot of assumptions. I never apologized. But I watched. And I learned." Daniel extended his hand. That's all that ever mattered. Never judge anyone by their appearance or background. True strength, intelligence, and leadership often come from the most underestimated places. Respect is not claimed by status, but earned through character. If you enjoy this story, please like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, stay curious. Who knows what story we will uncover next?